My youngest daughter recently got her driver's license. Yikes, right? But I've been thinking about something that my dad told me when I was first learning how to drive. He said, "Don't look at what's right in front of you. Always look further down the road to see what's coming," which is, that's the best advice anybody can get when they're starting to drive, right? But then I realized it's really good metaphorical advice for creative people. It's hard at first because we don't want to hit anything, right? I mean, we're concerned with keeping the car between the two lines and not too close to the car in front of us, and make sure you keep an eye on your speed and don't run out of gas. Just like with creativity, there's a lot to think about, and much of it requires us to divert our attention from the road momentarily and glance at the various gauges and lights on the dashboard. Once you get comfortable and get good at driving, apparently some of us never do, but for the sake of this analogy, once you're a good driver, you come to rely much more on your peripheral vision. You can see and be aware of things without having to divert all your focus to it. In the new self-driving cars we're always hearing about, that still sounds incredibly freaky to me. But they use what's called attention maps, which basically does what our peripheral vision does, but with ones and zeros. The camera has taken all of this data, and then the attention map filters out the unimportant stuff so that the computer driving the car, God help us, can focus on what's important. In our own creative pursuits, we can get a lot out of thinking this way. So today I want to talk about developing our own attention maps, how we can use them to focus on what's important in the moment and unlock that precious flow state. Just like with driving, in our creative work, we need to develop our peripheral vision. When we're beginners at something, whether it's music, writing, design, whatever, we focus intensely on the mechanics. How do I hold this chord? How do I structure this paragraph? Is my composition in this image well balanced? But true creative flow happens when those mechanics become second nature, and we can look further down the road. We develop our own creative attention maps, which filter out distractions and highlight what really matters. For instance, experienced writers don't obsess over every word when they're writing their first draft. They maintain an awareness of the overall narrative arc while letting sentences flow. Or musicians might be thinking about the emotional journey of a piece while letting their fingers just naturally find the notes. Like, I'm going here, and there's all these thoughts waving at me from the side of the road. I'm still aware of what's going on in the periphery, and sure, yeah, maybe I'll pull over and check something out every once in a while, but it doesn't distract me from my ultimate destination. But we don't want to have blinders on either. I remember I always felt horrible when I saw horses in New York City that had blinders on. I mean, I understand why they need to have them, but still, it's a shame they can't see what's going on around them. We need to be able to take everything in, even if we're not paying close attention to most of it. So what deserves a place on your creative attention map? What can you relegate to your peripheral vision? And what's down the road that you should be focusing on instead of immediate obstacles? These are questions for when the direction is already somewhat decided. When we sit down to work on a creative project, we don't need to ask, what is the thing that's really important about this? We already know. Not the urgent thing, not the difficult thing, but the essential thing that makes the work worth doing. We should have an innate understanding of this. This becomes our focal point, our view down the road, while all other concerns like deadlines, technical challenges, and self-doubt become part of our peripheral awareness. Also, ideas that are possibilities but lead away from our focal point. They're there, but they don't hijack our attention. For me, as a composer, the thing down the road is an aesthetic feeling, which is really hard for me to put into words. But I know when I'm heading in that direction, and I know when I've made a wrong turn somewhere. It's really that certain ideas meet some sort of unwritten criteria that I have some fuzzy notion of. And I think that's about as vague as I can be about that. For the purposes of this episode, it doesn't really matter what my own criteria is. But for each of us, this is ultimately what becomes our style. Over time, we develop a sense of what fits with our aesthetic. I feel like the older I get, the better I am at figuring out what that is. I mean, it changes over time. I'm not the same person I was in my 20s, thank God. But at the same time, there is something in my earlier compositions that still feels like what I'm trying to do now. But if I were going to write that music now, starting from the same ideas, of course it would be different. Paul Simon put out an album a few years ago where he revisited a lot of his earlier music that he wasn't happy with. And he changed some things. He reworked them to fit better with how he hears music now. So when we're looking down the road, we need to keep in mind that as we move forward, that focal point might not get any closer, but it'll get more in focus and easier to see. And we'll get better at guiding ourselves toward it. But just like with driving a car, there's more to it than just pushing the pedals and grabbing the wheel. Cars need maintenance and fuel, and sometimes break down. Sometimes our tire pressure is low and we need a little boost. There are different approaches or different modes for different times. Depending on what kind of work we do, sometimes that means editing and refining, or sketching something before we start on the final product. Or it could be repeating something over and over until we get it just right. Sometimes we're in intake mode, where we're processing information and inspiration and finding our next creative destination. In some cases, we need to get out the maps and protractors and chart a course. Some creative projects require a lot of planning, and some don't require any. Hey, sometimes it's fun to just hop in the car and go exploring. But even then, at some point, somehow we have to pick a direction. Even if we follow our instincts, at some point we're going to have to turn the wheel either left or right. So the various modes that we use for the different phases of the creative process don't all require forward motion. But when we're in drive mode, that's when we need to be able to look further down the road and keep the random ideas and distractions along the side of the road in our peripheral vision. When we're unable to look further down the road, we get into creative traffic jams. We fixate on immediate problems rather than our ultimate destination. In some cases, it's better to just resolve whatever the issue is you think is keeping you from moving forward. But most of the time, I think it's better to push it off to the side and keep creating. A lot of times, both when I'm writing and composing, if I say, I'll figure this out later, by the time I get done, whatever the issue was has either been resolved along the way or it becomes irrelevant. Thoughts about how much time I have left, or what will other people think of this, or is this a waste of my time, those are all characters that are waving at us from the side of the road, and we have to get good at seeing them and moving beyond them. The quicker we can get at acknowledging that we're having doubts or wondering about our abilities, the quicker we can get at steering our car back onto the road and watching those unproductive thoughts disappear in the rearview mirror. Like any skill, expanding our creative awareness takes practice. It requires a kind of double consciousness, maintaining awareness of details while holding space for the bigger picture at the same time. The fascinating thing about this approach is that it actually aligns with what psychologists tell us about achieving flow states. Flow happens when we are challenged but not overwhelmed, when we have clear goals, and when we're able to act with autonomy. Looking down the creative road gives us that clarity of purpose. It helps us distinguish between the meaningful challenges that deserve our focus and the minor obstacles we can push to the side of the road. When my dad told me to look down the road, he wasn't just giving me practical advice about driving a car. He was sharing wisdom about how to move through the world with intention rather than reaction. When I'm playing a concert, there are so many things going on. I mean, even with just a trio or a quartet, each musician is bringing ideas, including myself. Any of those ideas can give inspiration and influence the way that I move forward. But they can also distract me from what I'm ultimately trying to do. If I fixate on every idea I go past, I'll lose track of which way I was trying to go. When I'm composing, there are times when I have to really zoom in on one chord and figure out what it is I'm actually hearing. It can get tricky. But when I'm getting ideas down and the melodic phrases are flowing, I can't stop to figure that kind of stuff out. I might see it waving at me from the side of the road, but I know there will be time to figure that stuff out later. I would love to hear how this resonates with you. What do you think of this idea of attention maps? Do you feel like you get stuck dealing with issues that are keeping you from where you're really trying to go? Do you have a hard time figuring out what to focus on down the road? Leave me a comment or send me a message through my website, scottmclemore.com. This actually reminds me of an episode I did about how to get out of the creative roundabout, which you can click on here. Thanks so much for hanging out. I'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, keep the flow.